intelligence on our phone. We also are using a lot of ChatGPT or Claude or you name it, potentially in research and work. And what I'm going to spend some time talking to you all about now is how we're using it in the world of technology and specifically within companies. Um, in the role I get to play within Bain is I get to work with companies every day. And as you can imagine, lots and lots of people are asking the question, what is this AI thing? Does it work? How do I make myself more efficient because of it? And really, does it make us better in the end? Or is it we just got like a couple hours back because I don't need to research as much in Google or validate as much or do that kind of stuff? So I thought we could use the time today to do a few things. I thought we could first talk about, what, and I'll pull up the questions here, but what specifically, how are companies deploying AI today? So what is it? What are the tangible places where AI is creating differential capabilities and strengths? And then how is it impacting companies? And so, as you can imagine, lots of companies are doing lots of different things. And last but not least, what are the new risks? What should companies be thinking about? And so, we're going to go at a bunch of different altitudes, and we'll jump around. So maybe first, let's talk about what is this AI thing? How's it been coming about? AI is a concept that's been around for a couple decades, but we all got very popularized with it with the advent of ChatGPT, which came out in the 2022 range. And so it came online. All of a sudden, people found this thing amazing where you could ask questions. The reality is, we've had a lot of this AI functionality. We just didn't know it. So companies that used it a lot that we probably weren't aware of is Facebook or Meta and Google. And what those companies used it for is finding all sorts of interesting images. So as you can imagine, whether you're using Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or any of the elements on Facebook, in the past, the only way we could recognize information or objects or content was basically if someone watched the entire video or watched the entire reel and then wrote down this video has something to do with the New England Patriots and it has football players in it and whatever. And so someone would manually tag all these different videos and images. And that was the only way we knew if videos were good or bad, had good stuff or bad stuff. And what Google and Meta discovered, and ByteDance, which had TikTok and a bunch of others, is that you could use AI to go in and actually watch all the videos and tag them without having a human do that. And that's why we get into these really interesting algorithms where it can find all the things that you like because it doesn't have to have a human watch all the stuff. You can imagine tons and tons of humans watching videos all over the place and trying to tag all of them as fast as humanly possible. We were creating videos and images at a faster rate than we could actually tag them all. And AI enabled us to get there. So that was kind of the earliest use cases of how companies started using it. Fast forward to today, there's a whole bunch happening in AI. And I'm going to take a use case for a second. Has anyone here, and I realize we're all on mute, I'm sure people have written a blog post or you've written some form of communication or you've looked at uh, posting something to the internet. Well, blog posting happens to be a really big deal in the world of business. Because how do you tell people about what you've built? How do you make them understand what's really interesting? And what my company has done is we spent a lot of time helping organizations get more efficient. I'm about to put a page up that's going to kind of blow your mind. You're sitting there saying, okay, hey, let's say Apple releases a new iPhone or NVIDIA, which makes all of the cards that help all this work, has come out with a new product and they want to release a blog. As simple as that sounds, on average, and get ready, there's going to be a big picture here. It takes companies 5 to 7 weeks to get all of that done. So what does that mean? The first things first, if you follow along the top here in the red bars, the first thing they do is they determine what is the topic they want to talk about. And as you can imagine, when you have a company that has billions of dollars of revenue or hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, it takes them 1 to 2 weeks to figure out what we actually want to talk about. Then it takes another 2 to 3 weeks to actually write the blog post. Oh my goodness, the amount of iteration. Hey, that was a really cool blog post, but I wanted it to be funny. I didn't want it to be serious. Or, hey, I wanted it to have a lot more technical terms in it. Or, hey, we want to change the branding and how we look at it. So you can imagine there's a whole bunch of work in there. Then, after you've written it, there's a whole bunch of reviewing and editing, and that's another 1 to 2 weeks. And inside of that, there's legal sign up. So lawyers need to sign off and say, oh, this works. It doesn't infringe upon anything. It's not going to insult anyone. The HR person makes sure no one's upset about what it says. The marketing person needs to make sure the color is just right. You imagine if, like, for example, the Apple didn't have an apple on their commercials. That wouldn't be right. And so who's making sure we protect the brand? And then last but not least, you go through the process of getting it online and making it all work. This seems like a lot. If you can look across the bottom, you'll see there's so many tools. You've got Gmail, you've got Zoom, you've got Slack channels, which is a way of just communicating. It's like texting. You've got Google Docs. You've got all these WordPresses, how you put it onto the internet. You've got all these different workflows. And inside of it, you have a project manager who's running it, who's coming up with ideas. You've got content editors who's coming up with a whole bunch of ideas on what to put in it. You got editorial writers who are writing draft after draft after draft. You got lawyers, you got HR people, you got executive teams, you got all these people. There's 13 different types of people at a minimum trying to have input into this process. So this is how it used to work. And this is how it works at a lot of companies. It's hard to believe that it takes 5 to 7 weeks over 6 different people involved, tons and tons of iterations, 13 types of inputs, all these different types of lawyers and advisors. And someone once said, hey, I think AI solves this for us. Like, they're helpful at writing. What if we just told AI, here's a really good idea for a blog post. Can you write it for us? Shouldn't that make this whole process easier? And what we find when working with companies is that the reality is if you give AI to the person, the editor who's in charge of writing that article over and over again, we went from 5 to 7 weeks and we saved a whopping 10 hours. That's it. In the whole thing, it still took 5 to 7 weeks, but we saved 10 hours in the whole thing. Because what actually is happening within big companies today is while AI is making it easier to get parts of the job done, it's actually the organization is getting in the way of making them more efficient. And so what we're working on with organizations as you think about AI is that part of the challenge of getting the value out of AI and why it's so amazing when you all come into the workforce and start thinking about all these things is rethinking the process altogether. So what happens if you allow yourself, if you allow yourself to rethink the process? This is the same company after they've left all of those elements out. They said, actually, let's rethink this from start to finish. We want to come up with an AI prompt. Okay, develop an outline for an event blog post. The outline should include these 3 messages, create 3 texts or 20 visuals with a range of creativity to come up with a bunch of ideas, use a set of documents as the grounding truth. Based on this outline, create a draft, emphasize these messages, incorporate these keywords for all of our online marketing, and ultimately refer to our example style document of how we as an organization want to work. And zip, the AI goes to work. What's most important is we then said, instead of waiting 5 weeks to give that to the editor, what if you gave it to the person who had the idea in the first place? So instead of waiting and having, if we go backwards for a second, if it took us 1 to 2 weeks just to come up with the idea, and then 2 to 3 weeks to write the images and the story, and then another 1 to 2 weeks of editing, and we said, you know what we can do is let's take the person who came up with the idea, let's give them this prompt and let them run with it. On top of it, what's really exciting about the AI elements now today is we can say, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that we want lawyers to weigh in on. There's a bunch of stuff we want marketers to weigh in on around brand and otherwise. There's a bunch of stuff we want our HR people to weigh in on. But the reality is we only really want them weighing in when it's a problem. And so what if, in addition to using AI to help us write the article, we made synthetic lawyers? and synthetic brand review, and we made synthetic legal reviews, and we made synthetic HR reviews that went through and actually said, okay, based on the article that you've written and our review of it, is this on brand? If no, absolutely go to the marketer team. If it's going to trigger any legal issues, bring the lawyers in. But if it looks good, we don't need to spend time writing the blogs. They have higher value things to go do. If it's not going to hurt anyone from an HR perspective, then let's run this thing. And so as you start to rethink how you do the work, it makes it so that everyone is focused on the highest and most important thing. Because reviewing the blog post, while great and important, probably isn't the most important thing in every single person's day. It's just to check the box to make sure it all works. And so what ended up happening for this organization, and as people are rethinking the work altogether, is they're saying, actually, I need to take all the work that I push downstream and I get all these approvers, I need all these things. I'm going to move all that work to the left. And if you think of this concept, I'm going to move it from deeper and deeper into the organization and more to the decision maker and the person with the idea. And if I can empower that individual with AI, and I can create rules and AI, synthetic AI responsibilities inside of that, then everyone inside of my organization is spending their time on the highest and most important use cases. And so they went from 6 to 7 weeks and 13 different reviewers down to 2 days. This organization massively transformed how they worked. I use this as an example just to help you all start to think about this is the way, I'll call it old school, but the way companies exist today is we've had to build all this red tape and we've had to build all these different things inside to make the organization work. But startups today that are AI first, that are built around these concepts, are starting in this place from the beginning. And they're getting to market faster and they're thinking about problems differently and they're embedding AI into everything and how they work. And so I think what you're going to start to find in organizations, and as you start to work with companies and think about companies or ask your parents how their organizations work, it's going to be really interesting because we're going to have companies moving at two different speeds now. We're going to have AI startups that are moving at AI startup speed, which doesn't have as much red tape, that's thinking about things in different ways and pushing things in different speeds. And organizations that were built before have all the revenue, have all the sales, have thought about these things in certain ways, but also have lots of different reasons why they have to be slower. And so an expression that people have used in the past is, we're going to have to teach these organizations, teach elephants how to dance. We're going to have to teach these organizations to rethink how they do things. And if you coming back to the opening comment about if you stick AI in a bad process, you're going to get the same result. And so a lot of what we're doing with organizations today is helping them think about what is the process that it needs to be, and then how do we change the company and how we operate and how we think about things, and then go from there. So that's the start. I'll pause for a second, but that is the essence of what so many companies are going through with this AI transformation and coming to the realization that AI is awesome, but actually we've got to rewrite everything in the way we do to get the full value from it before we can actually start fixing processes. I'll pause for a second for questions, and then I'll jump into kind of the next topic of where, if this is one example of where AI is having impact, what are all the other areas that AI is having impact across companies?
I think we'll also be having a Q&A at the end of this session. So if you think of any
Yeah,
other questions during it, people can type it in and we'll answer at the end.
awesome. I'll keep going. Type them away, and I'll keep going. So the next question becomes, okay, like where is AI working in the company today? And I'm going to throw up a chart here in a second. It's a very dense chart, and I'll walk you through it why. But we find, and we are asking executive teams all the time, where are you getting the most value from AI? So this chart says, okay, we want to only look at in production. So what does in production mean? In production means it's in production, it is working in our environment, and people are using it every day. Not prototyping where like someone is playing around with it and we think it's interesting, but it's not being used. But in production, hundreds or tens and hundreds of thousands of people are using this every day. So this first one, if the way you read the graph is of all the people who we asked, what percent of them said, oh, yeah, we're using that AI in this specific use case? The number one, over and over and over again, is software development. I'm sure someone in here is doing some form of coding, but coding historically has been one of the most unique and special things that comes with building software. What we've found is there's been an evolution of company after company after company that's made it easier and easier to do with coding, but it's always taken a human sitting down at their desktop or laptop or you name it and writing in code and making it all. What is unique now is there's a company called Cursor out there. And for those that have heard of this company, Claude Code, they're using AI to say, give me all of the code you've ever written, everything you've ever written. And I'll read it and I'll understand it. And then I will help you write. You ask me what you want to do in natural human language. Hey, I want to build something that looks like X, that does Y, that does the following things, and I want it in this type of code format. And Claude Code and Cursor will start generating code on behalf of that prompt. Not all that different from ChatGPT, not all different from Claude, you name it, a bunch of these different things. But software development is transformative in how people are writing code. Similar to the description we just described, what makes Claude Code really special and why there's so much adoption here, 40%, 4 in 10 companies are using this in their organization today, is Claude Code has embedded the same thing. So when you're writing code, you typically have a person who's writing the code. You have someone who's reviewing the code. So that's a QA team. You have someone who's actually testing the code, who's running it through a bunch of algorithms. You have a product manager who's saying, is this consistent with how we want to write it? And same thing when you're writing in Claude, in this Claude Code or Cursor environment, it is spinning up these 4 or 5 different synthetic users who are providing you feedback all at the same time. And so you're sitting there and you're getting feedback like you would in a real production environment with all these different people around you, but you can do it. It's like you're working with a team of 4 to 5 people. And so again, it is an incredible capability. It's unique. It is growing like wildfire. So just to give you a sense, Cursor, which predated Claude Code, Cursor went from $0 and nobody knew it to $500 million in revenue in about 6 months. It's the fastest growth in history of companies. It's wild. And you can say the same thing about company after company that really locks in and builds something unique. But again, when we first develop these tools, context is everything. And context, what I mean is giving you what have you done in the past so that it can predict how you want to do it in the future. So if I went into any random code generator and I said, hey, I'd like you to build the following thing for my company with the following type of code, but I didn't give it any context. What it would generate would be good, but odds are it wouldn't be good enough. And so the big insight that Cursor came up with and Claude Code then mimicked and copied and a bunch of other elements, it said, hey, my odds of getting the code right for exactly for you will massively increase if you let me read all of your legacy code. And so what people are doing now is saying, okay, I can actually, the improvement is at a rate of 8 times better. And so if I put all of my legacy code inside of this environment and then give it the same prompt, the odds of me accepting that code is 8 times higher. So software development is off the charts. Customer service, same concept. Think about the job as every day I get a range of emails saying I need a password reset to the this feature doesn't work, or can you help me understand how to change the look and feel of XYZ thing? I'm sure you have parents or grandparents who've asked you questions about just Gmail, like how do I open up an email? How do I do reply all? You name it. Customer service, same concept. Odds are you can have a AI agent read the first draft what a response should be, and have a human review it and then send it out. And think about the multiplicative effects of if someone pre-writes an email for you and all you have to do is proofread it and send it out. So customer service is a really big thing. Same thing with an IT help desk inside of a company. If customer service is for your customers, IT is for the inside. So all of your internal employees, I need a password reset. I need a new laptop. I need a whatever. And as you work your way through this, it's pretty high. Marketing is another big piece of it. Same thing. We talked a little bit about that. That concept about blogs and blog posts. So marketing, there's a lot there. New product launches, the amount of AI you can do is if you train it on this is my product, this is what we think is differentiated, this is why we're better than the competition. I want to post it on LinkedIn. I want a concept for a big billboard ad. I want to do Super Bowl commercial. These are the concepts I want to do. Help me generate all these ideas and give me an 80% version and the uniqueness and the ability to take that at scale. Same thing with how you want the visuals to look. And then as you work your way down, there's certainly not nearly as much in legal or HR or finance or a bunch of other stuff or customer onboarding yet, but it's to come. But in general, we see so much energy in companies now saying we have to get software coding into our environment. We have to get customer service using these types of tools. We have to get it into our IT environments. And we're starting to see it around marketing and knowledge workers and a bunch of those other elements. So, what is actually happening? What's the results? When you do it right, and I'll lay this out here for a second, but on new products and features, for 40% reduction in writing time for job postings. So think about that. Companies are hiring people all the time. It's a lot of work. If I can reduce the amount of time that it takes, that's a massive opportunity for those people to go do more important things. 100% reduction in time to produce personalized visual design proposals. So think about it. That's fancy words for saying first draft of a visual. 100% reduction in time because I don't have to sketch it out. I don't have to use PowerPoint. I don't have to use Google Slides. I don't have to use a bunch of different things or Adobe. It actually auto generates it for me because of all the images. Customer service. Um, I really get excited about a 50% reduction in triage time. What does that mean? I can get back to my customers 50% faster because I can see what emails are coming in. I know what the easy ones are. I know what the hard ones are. So triages all them out. And for the super easy ones that are the same thing over and over again, can I get a password reset? I've auto set it up to resend the link to them and be done. And I can get that done in seconds. There's no need for any issues. And the harder ones I can spend more time on. But thinking about the customer experience, that is an amazing, amazing amount of time. Uh, as as it gets further and further down the page, software development, I think the things that get interesting is every time you write a piece of code, as you can imagine, part of the hard part is actually not writing the code. You have to document, hey, there's all this code in here and I changed these lines. Imagine if you were writing a 3,000 page book report for English and everyone in your entire grade at Weston High School were allowed to edit that document together. That would be insane. Yeah, everyone owns different parts of the section. It's 3,000 pages. No one can really read it front to back. So anytime, I'm sure some of you would be like, whatever, we'll just get it done. And others, you're like, I need to know what you changed. So I'm going to turn on track changes. But then once you change it, I need to know the context of like, why did you not like the original version of it? What changed? Why does it need to change? Same concept applies to coding. People have written tomes and tomes and tomes of code. Imagine if someone in who with Zoom, we're on Zoom right now. If someone went in and changed the code on Zoom and the whole system shut down and we didn't have any record of what code they changed or why they felt they needed to change it. Some of you may have experienced, you may have not. About 24 months ago, CrowdStrike pushed a little bit of code into the internet and they broke the internet. Companies woke up the next morning. Airlines couldn't take off because they gave everyone the blue screen of death. Companies couldn't start. Hospital systems couldn't work. It was an entire shutdown. And so if you don't have that history of what changed and why and what was the rationale, there's no ability to go back and audit. And so, as you can imagine, the amount of auditing and the amount of why I did this and why these changes happen is actually more work than the actual code change itself. And so I point that out because uh, uh, all these things around here, 15% reduction in employee time on code related activities, writing the code, adjusting the code, 25% reduction in labor spent on writing product safety reports. As you can imagine, all the different pieces, there's an enormous amount of time. And so it's exhilarating, all the cool things that are this AI is giving to us. But the flip side is there's a lot of work for us still to get done around all this stuff. The last one I'd lay out here as you think about context, and this is going to be a lot of different jargon, but I would love you to stare at the actual elements itself. When you write code without context, coming back to that core concept, if you don't give it context, on the left-hand side is two different types of code generation for software companies. But in general, without context, you are at like 5 to 10% accuracy, which means 1 in 10 times it's right and 9 out of 10 times it's wrong. You can imagine how painful that would be. So imagine you all were writing a book report or pulling information for that book report, and you're using AI, and 9 out of 10 times what it was coming back with was inaccurate or couldn't work for you. Odds of you wanting to use those AI agents is really low. As cool as that could be, there's so much rework you have to do to prove whether it works or not. And so early days of AI, people said this stuff is not worth it. Like it's cool, I like the concept, but 1 in 10 is right. Forget it. I'm done. The big unlock was if we give it the context, 1 out of every 2 times it is accurate. Still not great. Think about that for a second. Hey, it's not great, but it is half the amount of effort that I otherwise was doing. Now multiply that if that effort was going to take me a year. Okay, if I can do that in half a year, or said differently, if it was going to take me a year and I could use a whole bunch of coding and I can get it done in a week, and then I could go back and proofread, and there's a way to proofread and figure it all out. Man, the productivity of teams and everyone that's working around it just exponentially exploded. And so that's why, as we think about all the opportunities here in AI, that's where we've been pushing overall is, okay, let's go back to the core concepts. It's AI is really transformative, but it only works if we think about processes starting from scratch. Unfortunately, tons and tons and tons and tons of companies are not starting from scratch. And so for them, not only are they trying to introduce AI, they're trying to rewrite everything they do inside of their business and how they work. And when people, humans, whether it's you or your parents or these companies go through change, at first they get super duper duper excited. And that excitement is, oh my goodness, we're going to transform the world. This is so cool. It's going to change. And then halfway through, it doesn't work as well as everyone hoped. Unfortunately, every change that you live through, and you'll feel it like a roller coaster, it's never perfect. And people start to feel like maybe this isn't worth it. And so they go up the roller coaster of excitement, and then they come down the roller coaster and say, this may not be worth it. And it's a real struggle. And so as they think about those elements, that roller coaster, companies either end up in one of two places. As they're coming down that roller coaster, they say it's not worth it and we're going to give up. And that's where we historically, for the past few years, have seen companies go is, you know what? The old way worked. It was a lot more work, but you know what? It was still worth it because it worked. We didn't have any issues. And man, this new way is really hard. The flip of it is the ones that are working, they're going up the roller coaster, they're coming down the roller coaster, and someone in the leadership team is saying, you know what? I don't care if it's hard. We're going to ride this roller coaster back up and we're going to work this thing out. And that is where we're starting to see the real differentiation between the haves and the have-nots, the companies that are leading in their AI and the ones that aren't. And so as you start to stare at these problems and look at them overall, and you start to ask questions about what people are doing, AI is really cool. But I think the first thing you can ask is, hey, are you just applying AI to all the ways you used to do things? Or are you rethinking in a new order? And the second question is, how are you on that journey? Are you still riding that high of the opportunity, or are you riding on the backside of that roller coaster on the way down and questioning its results? And depending on where they are in that cycle, the big question is, what are they going to do about it? And so it's the same thing on whether it's doing sports, or you could apply it to writing book reports, or you could apply it to business logic, or you could apply it to like a big family trip. People ride these roller coasters of emotions, and what's crazy is it's highly predictable and highly studied science. And the real question is, when you're at the bottom of that roller coaster, after you've gone through the high and come back down to the bottom, what are you going to do about it? And I'd say that is what makes us most excited about the next few years, is most companies come to the realization that they're somewhere in this roller coaster. And whether they're at the high or at the bottom, it's time to change and they have to buckle up. And so a lot of companies are now rewriting how they get their work done. And the question for many companies is, will they get there faster than these AI startups or not? And that's what we're going to find over the next 3, 5, 10 years, is which companies rewrite themselves fast enough and can really think about problems differently and get their organization, that elephant to dance, and which parts are going to give up and stay with the old ways. And what we found, whether it's this cycle or prior cycles, the seminal example here is the steel mill uh, was always a humongous milling facility, and you could run that facility forever and ever. And a small company called Nucor came up with an idea of a mini mill, and it could run smaller rolls. They could put it closer to where the automakers were and all the people who needed steel, and they were massively more efficient. Well, they were a little bit more expensive, but they were more efficient overall. And people kept running these old steel mills, not these mini mills, but the steel mills forever and ever, because you had this massive mill and it produced so much steel. And the reality is some companies decided to just keep running those steel mills, and those companies are now out of business. And the ones that transformed to these mini mills were the ones that took off. But it took basically tearing down their old facilities and rewriting those, and producing a whole bunch of new mini mills, which took time and money and capital and a whole lot of chutzpah to pull that off. And we are in the same moment now with companies today. And so it's a really exciting moment for us for you all to be leaders. And in kind of the next few years, as you all enter the workforce, you'll be helping us think about how to rewrite the companies that exist today too. So with that, I'll turn it back to our hosts. I'm happy to do Q&A and all sorts of stuff.
Great. Thank you so much. Before we go into our open Q&A, we have prepared some frequently asked questions.
Sure.
So the first question we have is, what do you think is the most significant way AI has transformed business operation in the past year?
Most significant way. I think the easy one is everyone is using some form of AI. Uh, in how they search. And so if you think about a little bit of online search, so you all have done online search before. You've typed something into Google or whatever, the search bar in Safari, you name it. And it used to previously pull up a whole bunch of examples and links. And there are a few links at the top that said, here's the ads, here's a bunch of ads, and used to say ad colon and would give you a whole bunch of links. And then there was a bunch of stuff underneath that. Now you have Gemini. And I assume everyone here has seen the Gemini response at the top, and it gives a recommendation of what the answer is. And then for others, they're moved out of Google and they're doing their search in ChatGPT and a bunch of other stuff. I think that has been the most transformative thing for marketing, because now marketers used to be able to buy all those little ad spaces and the blue links and all the stuff at the top, and they could force their way to be front of the screen whenever you did search. And now all that search has moved into these AI engines. And unfortunately, AI engines always tell the truth. And so if you are a great company, it'll bring you up to the top. If you're a bad company, it probably won't. And if people have lots of bad reviews about you online, it'll say a lot of bad things about you in that write-up. And so I'd say that for companies in general has been really transformative in how they think about how they show up online.
I agree. Thank you so much. A second question is, what are some of the biggest risks for businesses who delay adapting AI?
Uh, I think the biggest risk is they're going to get run over. There's all these cool AI startups happening all over the place. And in general, what we find is every 10 to 15 years, we go through massive business transformation where new companies start. And so, previously in a different generation, we had all these companies like IBM. We had all these data tech companies, and now today we think of Google and Amazon and all these others. And we're now entering this next transformation. And some companies make it through, and some companies don't. And so I think realistically, uh, companies that don't embrace this change, similar to those steel mills we talked about, will just get run over and won't be able to catch up with all the innovation from these startups.
Great. Our next question is looking ahead 3 to 5 years, how do you expect AI to transform enterprise software and the ways businesses operate?
Whew. Um, that's a big question. If I had that answer, I'd maybe be starting my own company. But I'd say a few things that we know. Business software today is kind of old and clunky, and it's hard to work with, and people spend hours trying to make it work for them. And I think the big vision a lot of people have is in the future, instead of trying to break out Excel files and columns and rows and doing all sorts of research, and we're starting to see it come through even Excel now with Copilot. In the future, instead of actually trying to manage all this data, you're going to have an agent that you work with that says, hey, can you give me the forecast for next quarter? And the AI agent will run off and get all the data and pull it all together and come up with a forecast for you. Now, whether you trust it or not, that's a different story, but it's going to do a lot of the work. I Excel the other day, I was playing around with Copilot and I said, hey, I want to look at analysis like this. And it did all of the work for me. I didn't even have to go in and write my own formulas and do whatever. And so as you think about the world of enterprise software, I think we should all be envisioning a world where actually the humans are actually directing agents to do work, and the agents are doing the work itself, pulling all the information from all these disparate enterprise software systems. And so it's more about the actions of the data as opposed to managing the data itself.
I agree. A last question before we go into the Q&A session is, when Bain is hiring students straight out of college, what do they look for? How do students make sure they are tailoring their academic experience for a consulting role with an organization such as Bain? And with the advances in AI, how do you see the role of first-year Bain hires changing?
Oh, wow. It's a great one. Um, so first, man, we'd be lucky to have all of you at Bain. And so we're always looking for talent. We're just trying to find smart and curious people. At the core, I'd say don't feel like you need to like make your major perfect at college to get a job at Bain. I was a politics major in college. There's lots of people who are English majors and whatever. What we're looking for is people who are really curious, who are strong academically, and so demonstrate that they're really smart and know and get very excited about problem solving. And so whether that problem solving is figuring out comparative literature of the Odyssey versus the Iliad, or thinking about ways the economic stuff should set up, or I wrote all my stuff during the Iraq War of how how we should be thinking and shaping our foreign policy in a time of war. So I'd say don't stress about having the right major. Pick something you're really passionate about, and that'll really take you a far way. And then in general, as we think about the work itself, I'd say for sure, as we continue to evolve, um, the way we do work is going to change. Um, for example, we help companies think about whether they should buy a business or not all the time. Hey, is this a good business to buy? If yes, why? If no, why? A lot of questions we ask now, and what a lot of our team members are doing is saying, hey, if I give some of our team members 2 weeks and a coding assistant tool and Replit and a bunch of others, how much of this business can I recreate with AI in 2 weeks? And if we can get like 80% there in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, then odds are that's probably not a business you should be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on, and you should be building it yourself. And so the way we do work and the way we think about work, there will always be a need for people to think critically, and the way to point to all these agents and thoughtfulness and how to think about and apply them to business. And so the work is not going away; it's just changing how we do stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering those frequently asked questions. Now we'd love to open the floor for questions from the audience. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat for Mr. Callahan to answer. It looks like we've had a couple questions trickle in. We'll start with which industries are seeing the biggest business impact from AI right now and why?
Um, Great question. First and foremost, technology and software is having massive, massive impact from AI, but it's happening in a lot of places. It's really cool. So, for example, we're working with healthcare companies and for a microscope company. This microscope company typically, you take a human, you look inside the microscope, you have a science degree, you stare at what it is. Now, because of all the images we have, we can actually have AI look through the microscope of the image and make a recommendation of what they think it is and have the human validate it. So it's impacting life sciences. It's impacting how we do industrial stuff. So, an example, it's still a technology company, but Google has a whole bunch of um, places where they store all of their data infrastructure and technology. So all the servers that run all the cloud stuff that works like this. The most expensive cost in those facilities is actually cooling. So you can imagine all the computers heating up at such a high level that they'll build them like in cold places so it'll make it a little bit cheaper to run the facility, or next to, or the power that they need to generate, they'll be next to wind turbines or next to big waterfalls where they can use water wheels, all that kind of stuff. Um, that's not a technology problem, but what they solved with it is they ran AI across it and were able to reduce the amount of cooling costs by 40%. And so anyway, as you think about all these different applications and use cases, AI can be used in a lot of different places. In general, like coming into government services, it'll be slower. In construction services, it'll be a little bit slower. As you can imagine things that would probably be slower on the adoption curve than others, but technology is definitely first. Health and life sciences coming next. And so it's coming for a whole bunch of the elements along the way.
Right, sounds great. Our next question is, as AI reshapes how companies work, what kinds of new careers or roles might become available to today's teenagers that aren't super common yet?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, Well, I guess the easy one is it is easier than ever to start a company, and it's easier than ever to build applications and tools. I'm sure some of you have played around with tools like Replit or Lovable in your spare time. Uh, the ability to build UI and UX is really incredible. And so I'd say it's never been more accessible to start something because you don't have to be a coder to be able to figure it all out. I'd say that is one from a career perspective that is definitely new and definitely a lot more achievable. I'd encourage you, if you actually want to start a company, you should probably learn a little bit of coding before you get after it. But certainly, as you think about ideas, where to get going, it is pretty transformative in how it works.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. I think our next question is what outlook on the impact of AI on the finance, what is your outlook on the impact of AI on the finance industry? How do you think finance jobs will be replaced in the near future?
Whew. Um, so I'd say It depends on which parts of finance. There's just pure accounting. There's tr sales and trading. There's banking. There's a whole bunch of different things. I'd say what we have seen, if we start with sales and trading for a second, um, the concept of AI and the concept of quantitative based sales and trading has been around for a long time. And fun fact, if you look up what is the biggest volume of trading in general, it's all these quant funds where there's not actually a human trading. They've just built a model that just spins out when to buy and how to buy over and over and over again. And as you can imagine, AI is going to play an even bigger role in those quant funds as they continue to think about how to make um, their models run. So I'd say AI will play a really big role there. On finance in general, on if you are running a company and you're going to close the book at every quarter. In North America, every quarter you have to report your earnings. It's a lot of work. I have to bring every receipt I've ever received on how much stuff I sold, what the costs were, all that kind of stuff. It's called closing the books. That is an enormous process. You can imagine an agent going out and pulling all that information together at a faster speed and pulling it all together and giving you insights faster. So I'd say it is impacting every profession. And that's the same with marketing and sales and coding and you name it. And so I'd say you should expect a world where it's more. I was talking with the CEO of a large, his famous company, and he does a lot of pushing his team. And he said, I want you to think about, for those that are X-Men friends, as you think about AI, it's like your exoskeleton. AI is not going to replace the humans, but it's going to make you 2 times more productive because you can do more things and it can take things further along and it can do all sorts of stuff. And so I think about that in all these professions is AI is an exoskeleton that's going to make you multiples more productive because of what it can do for you.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is, how is AI changing the skills companies look for in software and business roles, especially for students preparing to enter the workplace?
So I'd say another great question. These are all, I'm pre-reading a little bit. These are all great questions. So kudos to all you for very smart questions. I'd say how does it change the skills company look for? What I believe, and this is not a perfect answer, is because the barriers to starting new companies is easier and easier, and because the barriers to uh, writing code and building cool UIs and all that kind of stuff is easier and easier, it's having really good ideas of what people need, whether it be consumers or your customers or all that kind of stuff. And so I'd say really deep ability to understand the needs of your users and then making sure that what you actually build is good and not fast. And it could be it's good and fast, but it's got to be good because we're about to be inundated. If you think about the world of the App Store, how many hundreds of thousands of apps exist out there? But we all probably only have, if we looked at all of our collective phones, we probably have pretty much the same apps over and over and over again. And so, like, good products rise to the top. And so I'd say the thing that is going to be differentiated is like unique and differential thinking about the needs of your users, whether they be consumers or corporate users, and then being able to translate that into something that teams can go do.
Amazing. Our next question is, how do you think younger generations will handle AI, given that they may be more tech savvy, but not fully understand the processes AI is already completing for them?
I think the future is the next generation, to be super clear. We've got to get through this generation of people just a little bit afraid to work with it or don't understand it. So the faster we can get you all into the workforce and start questioning how we do things, the better. And I think your intuition on what the right way is to do things, combined with folks who understand why we do things a certain way, is going to make us work a whole lot faster.
Amazing. Okay. Our next question is, what are the big unknowns as it relates to AI being applied in the business setting? Is there anything that you fear or just things that you are uneasy about?
Um, there's always fear of like, is the movie Terminator right? And are we all going to die a fiery death from determine. No, I don't think that, but I do think what AI has done is it's created an incredibly powerful tool. And naturally, um, for every person out there that wants to use AI for good, there's also a bunch of people who have seen this as a moment to use AI for bad. And so we see more companies trying to do uh, cyber attacks and stealing data and new innovative ways that AI enables them to do things that we've never been able to do before. And so I think a risk for companies is data security and data privacy and risk mitigation can is high and will only get more challenging with the advent of all this AI stuff. And so data security and all this cybersecurity stuff is going to be really, really, really important going forward. And so protecting identities and that kind of thing.
Great. Our next question is, if I'm going to go all in on an AI startup, which areas are actually worth dedicating the next 5 to 10 years to? And are there any promising spaces that aren't really on the public radar yet?
That is a good one. I guess the question becomes, where can you build a startup that the companies like the frontier models, Claude and Grok and Gemini and others, won't build something that can do something pretty good. And so a little bit of the scariness of starting startups is every year these models, these frontier models are getting better and better. They're eating and destroying all the startups that were doing something that was like incrementally better than what the model had previously. And so you'll find cartoons out there that basically show that OpenAI is just killing all the startups a year after they've started because their next model is way better than the previous. And so I'd say as you think about where to go, I think about solving really distinct use cases that the models that you're leveraging the models to do, but it's not something the model that's going to solve tomorrow. So the example being, um, uh, a whole bunch of people built co-pilots, if you will, where, hey, I'm going to take the model, I'm going to train it on a whole bunch of data, and then I can build something on top of that that I can ask questions, and it will tell me all the cool things that are inside of that. Well, lo and behold, the next model that all these companies came out with could do exactly that, and tore apart all those companies that were building that concept. So I think get really narrow, get very specific, and solve a use case. The odds of just pulling a model off the shelf won't solve overnight.
Great. Another question that we have here is how can we also spot startup opportunities that most people maybe haven't noticed yet?
Those are those are great. There's a lot of different ways. You can look at where all the if you want to just stare at a couple of these venture funds, you look at Y Combinator, some early stage angel investing stuff. If you just type angel investing, there are companies like Crunchbase and otherwise that are uh, keep track of all these companies all over the place. And so those early angel investors are before someone even takes first seed rounds for venture. Then venture is an A, B, C, D. They have all these rounds, and then you go into growth equity, and then growth equity into private equity, and then you can go all around. But if you think about that, there's lots and lots and lots of companies tracking all these seed rounds or angel investing, and that's where I kind of start. And then also, like lots of great ideas are coming out of high schools and universities. So as you start to move into the university world and start between the Harvards and the MITs and the Babsons and the uh, Wellesley College and Brandeis, you name it. We have all these colleges in our backyards. There's students everywhere doing startups, and so it's just kind of joining those communities. I'm sure there's startup communities inside of that that you can jump in, and a few of them are really big. Babson is a huge startup community. That's one of their claims to fame, and so that's another place where if you show up to a few of those and ask a few questions, I'm sure someone would love a little extra help.
Okay, great. We have two more questions. What role is AI playing in decision making at the executive level?
There's two ways to take that question. What role is it playing as executives think about it? And the answer is executives are thinking about it all the time. It's the question their boards are asking. It's the question their investors are asking. And so having a strategy and figuring out how you're going to put AI both in your products. How do I make my products better with AI? And then on top of that, how do I use AI in my business to make my businesses more efficient for all the things we just described? That is the number one thing they're thinking about all the time.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. We have another question in the chat, a little bit less tech related. Consulting is roughly $500 billion industry. Do you think it justifies that price and how exactly?
Good one. Uh, it's a huge industry. And as you think about the role of consulting, there's lots and lots and lots of different types of consulting. There's technology consulting. So how do I actually deploy this technology and make it work? There's management consulting. Which decisions do I make and why? What are the right choices? There's questions around HR consulting. How do I set things up? How do I treat people the right way? There's consulting around hiring the right people. There's all sorts of consulting, and so there's lots and lots. There's enablement consulting. How do I train my sales force to be better at what they do? I think the genesis, if you think about consulting, is um, a company may be going through a change, and they go through it once. If I'm going to buy another company, how do I put these two companies together and how do I make it most efficient? It's the first time that company's going through it and probably the only time the company's going through it. And the value of consulting is the experience to say, actually, I spend all of my life going from company to company, helping them put them together. And so since I've driven down this road before, I know where to make a left turn and where to make a right turn, what's working, what doesn't work, how to think about those things. And so as you think about the role of consulting, there's not enough people inside of companies who have had an experience and seen it multiple times that sometimes it's worth spending that money. And so I'd say in general, as we think about consulting, absolutely consulting will change. And there's lots and lots of things you can see online that say, oh my goodness, I can put a deep research report and I can get exactly what that consultant said and told me at the same price, at a materially cheaper price. The same thing was said about the banking industry when Excel was invented. Before Excel, we all had, a whole bunch of spreadsheets where we wrote down all the numbers, we calculated them all out, and people said, "Oh my goodness, Excel is the death of the banking industry." What we all came to decide is actually how to price an asset, how to sell an asset, how to get the connections with the asset, how all that stuff works out. There's still some art to it. I probably won't pay the person as much for all like the handwritten stuff now, but I'll pay them for the other parts of the job that I care about. And same thing with consulting, which is the way we price and the way we get work done is absolutely going to change. But the core and kernel of experience and having lived a journey multiple times is probably valuable for companies over and over again. And so, how do we keep staying on the front and bleeding edge so that when companies come and ask for help, we can be there to help them and give them the roadmaps on how to do it a lot faster.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for all of your questions. We hope that you all found this webinar helpful and that you are walking away with some meaningful tips. A recording of this webinar will be on our YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that. Also, if you would like to be automatically notified for all future webinars, please send your email in the chat so that we can add you to a mailing list.
Also, if you have any further questions, want to continue this conversation, or get involved, feel free to reach out to any of our Financial Literacy Club members.
Thank you again to Mr. Callahan for sharing your time and expertise with us. And thank you to everyone for being a part of today's event.
We hope you all have a great night, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks all.